Hey, thanks for checking out Nuts and Bolts with Tone. Welcome to my channel. Today I have a 2020 Mercedes-Benz Metris 4-cylinder engine with a check engine light complaint. So I'm going to scan it right now. Let's see what we got. All right, got the snap-on scanner here. Normally I'd use my top-down, but for some reason it's not showing me freeze frame, and I needed freeze frame. So it looks like we got a P0300 combustion chamber misfire, a P0301, and a P0304. Let's take a look at the freeze frame. I already wrote it down just so we don't have to go into generic. So I just wrote down the important information, 5354 RPMs, so 5300 RPMs. It happened 59 seconds after startup. The fuel rail pressure was 2,898, and we're going 41 miles per hour, and the ECT was 174. Coolant temp is important. You don't want to go and test something if, let's say, you're 60 degrees outside and the code's set at 175 degrees, which it's not warm here, so it's got to warm up a little bit. So sometimes you need it to be the operating temperature. And then 99.6% calculated load. This is super important because this tells me that we're most likely looking at an ignition coil, because this is pretty much wide open throttle at 41 miles per hour. So that's generally a secondary ignition misfire. So we're going to drive it and look at the fail counter. So I'm going to go here. So it took me a minute to figure this out. I don't work on Mercedes all too often. This is a 2020 also, so it's a little bit tricky to find the values. So we're going to go ahead and just go to the next screen, and I found it in fault counter. So fault counter is going to show all the cylinders. So earlier I had 2 misfires on cylinder 1, so it just went away. So super important here. You're going to go into graph, and on the snap-on scanner it's pretty easy because it's going to show you right here. So cylinder 1 has misfired 3 times, and then no misfires on anything else. So I'm going to go drive it right now, and we'll look at the values after I drive it. So I'm in the process of test driving this thing, and I just saw the funniest little icon I've never seen. It is a cup of coffee icon telling you that it's hot. Not sure what that is, but there we go. So I'm not feeling any misfires. However, we're showing some misfires here and there, only on cylinder 1. Cylinder 4 is still reading 0. Sorry about the glare. I'm trying to show you before it goes off the screen. So I just pulled into the shop, and looks like we're slowly counting misfires right now. Just sitting here, I've counted 5 misfires. This is sitting at idle. So it looks like 6. So we're continuing to count misfires on cylinder 1. I just felt that one. It's a Mercedes, so it has much better, detection of PIDs and everything else than other vehicles. So here we are, still misfiring on cylinder 1. So we're going to go ahead and get under the hood and see what we can find. This thing also has grinding brakes. They didn't say anything about grinding brakes. And a TPMS light. All right, let's check under the hood. So here's under the hood. So we're going to have to go ahead and pull the airbox off, get the intake tube out, and the engine cover off to get to the coils. All right, so this thing has kind of a weird setup. I've never seen this kind before, but anyways, so here's the coil. And the coil looks like this. Got a connector on this side like this. It's got a plastic tube attached to it. So we don't even need to swap anything. We already know that this is the problem right there. I'm not even going to pull the plug. So look at all that green in there. You can see that through the camera. So we're going to go ahead and inspect this thing, get some coils and plugs sold, and test drive it. All right, good thing about having a European tech nearby while you're talking out loud. This is just a plastic tube, and this is kind of normal. And apparently these coils generally don't fail. So when you pull it off, this is just the grease in there, and you can see that the tube looks normal. This is just a spark plug wire, basically. It's coil tube, coil, plug boot, whatever. And apparently these don't really fail. So we're gonna pull the spark plug out and see what it looks like. And this one takes a 12-point 14 millimeter spark plug socket for these. Finally getting back to this Metris, a couple things that I said earlier, I found out some more information. First of all, that little coffee cup on the dash is the car telling you that you need to take a break. I asked my Euro guy, and he said, yeah, it's something, he doesn't know how it's calculated, but Basically, they're telling you to just pull over and take a break. And then secondly, we're not going to go after the ignition coils. My Euro guy said he's never seen a coil fail on one of these, that new style coil. But the plugs are original and they're due at 45K, and we're sitting at, I think, 87K. So he said that these engines are terrible. So we're gonna put some spark plugs in this, and then we're gonna get the Mercedes scan tool and do a relative compression and stuff like this. Maybe I'll do the relative compression before I do the spark plugs and see what's going on. So let's get into it. So here we are. This is our Mercedes scan tool. It's a Chinese scan tool. It does most stuff. It doesn't auto detect, auto VIN detect, or anything like that. But it gives us all the functions of a Mercedes factory scan tool. So I'm going to do a relative compression with this. And we're going to check the integrity of the engine before we go and sell spark plugs. So let me get this loaded up and I'll show you what it looks like. If you're not familiar with a relative compression test, a relative compression test is done through a scan tool, and it uses the computer to detect if there is a low cylinder at all. The reason you do that is you're checking the mechanical aspect of the engine. If a valve isn't sealing, if a cam lobe is worn, if you have a bad lifter, if you have whatever the case may be, you're going to see it in the relative compression. The things you won't see in relative compression sometimes are if you have like an overhead cam engine and you have a valve train problem. Generally, you need a running compression test to find that. You can hook up a vacuum gauge and watch the vacuum flutter. A lot of times if you have like dual overhead cam engines and your timing belt's off, or if you have, you know, valve issues, cam issues, things like that, you'll see that. In a diesel, in 7.3s and 6 liters, even a 6.4, a 6.0 and a 7.3, you can jump a solenoid wire and you can crank the engine over and you listen for the engine. And if you hear anything abnormal, then you know you need to go and check compression. You don't want to sell spark plugs, coils, injectors, any of that stuff if you have a mechanical engine problem, because your misfire is never going to be fixed. So here we go. We're doing so this code right here was set because I had the airbox. So here's the Metris here. We're back to this. I was going to show a camera view of me doing all of this. I was stuck on a diesel and a whole bunch of other stuff yesterday that I didn't get to this till late, and I was trying to get to at least where I could get to the spark plugs. So we took the airbox out. This one right here, it has a harness that goes through over here and it clips in here for the wiper module. I took the wiper module out, unplugged it. Unfortunately, this connector, this wire here, it looks like it's the washer nozzle. I'm not disconnecting that because that's all kinds of, everything is going to break. So what I was able to do at the end of the day was just prop this up like that. I had it propped up, and then when I was racking it at the end of the day, it fell. And so here we are. So I'm going to just put just kind of work around all this. I don't want to disconnect this. It's not really wanting to let go, and maybe it comes out right there, and oh, okay, so maybe that's all it's holding it is that. Okay, cool. So now we can at least move this out of the way so we're not fighting that. All right, and so I'm gonna set up a camera right here, and or actually maybe over here, because this will be in the way. So we're going to go ahead and get to these spark plugs and coils. You can see that this is what it looks like here. Obviously, I'm going to have to lift up this harness here. We're going to have to go ahead and like pop the clip here to gain access so we can move it, because the connectors are on this side of the coil. So right there and there and there. And you just have to lift them up slow. There's a plastic boot here, a plastic housing that holds the rubber boot on. So let me get this set up, and let's get these spark plugs done in this Metris. Not sure how those back ones are going to come out because of that connector. So he's got to pull slow. Can't really see this one that great. It was hard to set the camera up like this. So what I thought before, I thought this was the plug wire. This is actually just the this is just actually a rubber boot. I mean a plastic boot that clips onto the coil boot right there. And I actually took this one out and it looked normal. That's just the dielectric grease in there. So there's coil 1. Just in case I get pulled away from the job and the coils get separated. Sometimes if you have trouble disconnecting a connector, you can go down in between like this, and as you push the pin in, you can pry, and it will put leverage on the connector and push the connector out. So now you got to pull real slow on these. It's kind of hard to get out. I think the front one I might have pried on it a little bit. Well, there we go. That got it to start to pull. Because the harness has more room to get out. And here, that I was talking about right here, you can kind of just pry, push the tab, and then it comes off. Just gonna pry, and as you pry up, there's a spot in the coil that is lower, so you can get under it and give you more leverage. Alright, like I said before, this is a 12-point 14mm socket. First time I ever saw these kind of spark plugs was on a Mini Cooper. Sucks, we might be doing all this work and it may still have an engine problem. Spark plugs are weird looking. Like that. I mean, regular iridium spark plugs here, but weird little top. I mean, in looking at it, it's be real hard to tell. I mean, it does look like there's quite a bit of a gap there. This is the number 3. Look at that one. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you can definitely tell a difference in these. There's almost no gap there. Yeah, anyways, no way to tell. Kind of a bummer when your when your maintenance is due and you haven't done it, and you are doing maintenance to see if there's still a problem. Okay, we're gonna go real slow with this, because like I said, I'm gonna torque these, I think. This big ratchet here easily can over torque something. Definitely not a recommended use for putting in spark plugs is these cordless ratchets. Funny story, a very long time ago I worked with a guy who used to use an air ratchet to put in spark plugs, and I used to tell him how he was crazy, how you should never do that because you could over torque them, you could over tighten them, you could do all kinds of damage. And he used to tell me that he knew the calibration, he knew how his air ratchet worked, and he could do it without messing them up. And I always thought he was crazy. And in my head I thought, man, you're nuts, like I would never do that. And I never did, not with air tools. And then when I got my cordless tools, I learned how to be light on the trigger, and so now I use them all the time. Just gotta be careful. One time I was doing a Volkswagen Vanagon, and I did heads on it, and when I got done, one of the spark plugs wasn't centered, and I cross-threaded it, and it was in a Vanagon, so there was nothing fun about a Vanagon anyways. And luckily I was able to use a chaser and straighten out the threads and fix it. All right, let me go look up the torque specs. So the spark plug, the torque is 23 Newton meters. My inch-pound torque wrench goes to 200 inch-pounds, which is, it's 203 is the spec, so we're gonna go to 200 and then give it just a little and we're good to go. Hopefully I'm not breathing into the microphone. Literally, the phone is right under my nose. I don't think I ever torqued a spark plug before. I think this might have been the first time. Maybe I did it one other time, not sure, but it's not a practice that I practice. All right, their torque. Let me go put this away. So anytime I put spark plugs or new coils or anything, I like to put just a little bit of dielectric grease. My tube is hard to squeeze. I have these awful cracks on my fingers and fingertips hurt. All right, so here we go. We're gonna go into engine. Got the snap-on scanner now because clearly everything else was not able to help. So we're gonna go ahead and clear the codes out. So I left the cowl and everything off, and I'm gonna let it idle here for quite some time. It would eventually show misfires just from sitting at idle. So one little tip, if you have this ability, go into graph mode right there. You're gonna clear all triggers. And then you're gonna come down here and you're gonna just wanna select. So now I can see cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4. And right here we have the min-max. So I can let this idle in my bay, just come take a peek, and if it shows any misfires, it'll show it right there on the max. So let's see what happens here. Let's see how the initial start is of the day. Okay, start it right up. Okay. Coolant temp was 174 when it first misfired. When it set the code. When it set the P0300 code. So, not quite sure what's going to happen. Being that it's cold. I did not try this from cold. So, let me go. I'm going to let this idle and scope. And I'm going to go get ready to start pulling a turbo off a 6.4 Power Stroke. Just got back from the test drive, and you can see 0, 0, 0, 0. No misfires, and it's running smooth. So one of the things, and I took the exact same test drive that I took when it first came in. So if you ever look up a code, the first thing that the code will tell you for the flow chart is to look up the freeze frame data and drive the vehicle or put the vehicle in the same conditions that's when the code's set. So what you want to do is anytime you drive a vehicle or do anything to duplicate something, after your repair to confirm, you need to go and do exactly what you did the first time to make sure that the code does not set, because that was the criteria that the code set originally, or you experienced the complaint where you could confirm and test and sell a repair. So that's it on this one. It was pretty simple. It was just spark plugs. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, you get notified of all my future content, which you definitely don't want to miss. Thanks for watching. See you next time.